and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
Hey guys, it's Logan from Thrills United, and you're listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Hi, I'm Taylor Bybee from Coaster Studios, and you're listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Hi there, my name is Ryan Subler, and I'm from Christian Coasters, and you're listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Hey, this is Scott Schaefer from Upside Media, and you're listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Yes, I accept the Coaster Challenge. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Coaster Challenge podcast is here. It's time to face your fears. Get that theme park therapy and lend us both your Coaster Challenge podcast is here. Your fear can disappear. We know that theme park therapy can dry up all your tears. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Yes, I accept the Coaster Challenge. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? We accept because you know we're not average.
You're listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast. A journey where people become fearful to fearless, all from riding roller coasters. So please secure your hats and glasses and keep your hands and arms inside the podcast. It's time to accept the Coaster Challenge with your host, Kim Dykes.
Hello, this is Kim with the Coaster Challenge podcast, and today I'm talking with Kris Werner, a professional graphic designer. Kris's work can be seen in many different formats, such as vehicle wraps and outdoor signage. Kris has done freelance work for nationally known clients such as NASCAR, Kings Island, the Coaster Kids Foundation, and Coaster Studios. Welcome to the podcast, Kris.
How are you doing, Kim?
Awesome. It's so glad to have you. I am so happy you are here to talk with us today. Let's get started with you telling us a little bit about yourself. You can talk about your coaster life, your work life, whatever you want to tell us. Stage is yours.
Well, a little bit myself is I went to school for graphic design work at Cincinnati State Technical and Community College. And from there, I spent the last 14 years in the printing industry. Basically, I guess you would say honing my craft that I've done with all like the coaster posters and stuff like that to be able to do what I'm doing now. So, but other than that, work right now is just, I just do freelance graphic design work. So that's just what I've been doing. I'm working on some stuff right now for some clients. I'm working on 3 different vehicle wraps right now for 3 different clients. So I got a appliance repair business I'm working on. I got a music studio that I'm working on, and I have a cleaning company that I'm working on. So it's like 3 different, companies or wild, businesses. So once they're done, maybe I'll go ahead. I'll post it on my Instagram what those designs look like. So.
Well, that is just absolutely fascinating because I know you're really well known within the coaster community for your artwork, but the fact that you can take that talent and expand it to so many different branches is just absolutely incredible. Okay, so now we're going to start to talk about coasters because that's what our podcast is about, Coaster Challenge podcast. Let's get started with you telling us about your first coaster. What was your first coaster?
My very first coaster was probably like everybody else's first coaster here in Cincinnati. It was the Beastie. Now it's called Woodstock Express, but originally it was called Scooby-Doo. But it was called the Beastie when I rode it. That was my very first wooden roller coaster and very first coaster of all time. It still has a special place for me. I still want to get that credit every single time I go to the park. Even though it is a kid coaster, I mean, it's still fun to go and ride to get that nostalgia feeling back.
Oh, I agree completely. That was actually my first coaster too. It was back when it was called the Beastie. And I still just love the nostalgic memories of Hanna-Barbera Land. And one of the things, funny story, that our group did when we were at Kings Island back on opening day, we did a Woodstock Express train takeover at night. That was a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We have a good time. Okay, so as you have developed more experience with coasters, what is the one coaster that you would say has scared you the most?
Oh, it was King Cobra without a doubt. When that first opened up, I think it was 1984 is when it first opened up. I was scared to because it was the first stand-up coaster ever in existence, I believe. Could be wrong, but they to have just that bicycle seat that you were sitting on with that one little lap bar that came up. I just looked at that and I was like, I looked at my dad. He was like, "Oh, it's gonna be fine." I was like, "Okay, whatever." And I was like a little apprehensive about riding that. But like once I got over it, I was like, "Man, that was so cool." I just wanted to do it again and again. But I wasn't sure that at first, watching those people get on the train, standing up, riding a roller coaster. But like once I got to do it as a kid, I mean, it was pretty awesome. Like King Cobra still like I still rank King Cobra up there as like one of my top 7.
I agree. I remember riding King Cobra, and unlike some of the other stand-up coasters that are still around, I remember it being an incredible ride. I was in the second grade when it opened, and you're the first person to say that that was your scariest. Usually,
Oh,
it's like,
really?
oh yeah, usually like Top Drill Dragster or something like that. I know that was the one that scared me the most.
I'm aging myself now, Kim.
Yeah, I'm amazing myself too. I didn't even ride anything. I grew up being told that everything was scary. My family went to Kings Island once a year. Everything was scary. I wasn't allowed to ride any coasters, but they would spin me to death in tight circles, which I hated. And I still am not a fan of to this day. It makes me feel sick. But actually didn't even get on a coaster at Kings Island until my senior night in high school in 1994. Everybody was going to ride Vortex, and I wasn't going to be the only one left standing there. So
Yeah.
I got on it, and I actually loved it. And it surprised me that I liked it. So that began the process of a lot of undoing for me when I realized that everything I had been told was so scary might not be quite as scary as I thought. Okay, so King Cobra was your scariest coaster. Do you remember
Yeah.
how you were feeling when you approached the station?
Oh, I was a little apprehensive about riding it. I had like I can remember as a kid approaching the station. I was a little scared. I gripped my dad's hand a little tighter than I normally would on any other coaster that I had ever been on Kings Island before. And you know how you get that that little butterfly feeling in your stomach when the train pulls up to the station and you don't really know exactly what's going to feel like or what the coaster is going to be like. But then you get in the ride, and then, you go up the lift hill, and that anticipation feeling, then once you get up to the top, and then everything just lets go because you're on the ride and you have that euphoric feeling like this is the best thing ever. Like you just let everything out because you're screaming and everything. And that's kind of what it felt like. Like I knew everything was going to be okay, for one, because my dad was there with me, and I knew he wasn't going to let anything happen to me because he was right there. But that's what I felt like when I got off the ride. That was the best feeling that I had ever felt before on that type of ride or any roller coaster, mind you. But I just couldn't wait to do it over and over again. So
My experience going through the station at Top Thrill Dragster was quite different because I expected, like what you're talking about, the anticipation and that sort of thing. I was eerily calm going through the line and everything. I was completely fine, almost too okay. And then it all hit when I sat down in the seat. And they roll, you roll up and then you stop. And you're sitting there at the stoplight. That's when I began to contemplate whether or not that was a good life decision. And I remember my hands shook so hard. I didn't know if I was going to survive the ride. But, it was very much like what you said. After I did it, I of course wanted to do it more. And it became a goal of mine. I'm going to ride this thing until I can put my hands up on the launch, because I was watching. Oh yeah, I was watching the kids do it, and I'm like, they can put their hands up on the launch. I can do this. I can do this. And I was scared to death to do it. It took me 5 tries, 5
To do it?
rounds on wheel dragster. Round 6, I finally did it. And
Did you get a little
then
whiplash?
no, I was good. I still run it like that. But I have to be careful though, the way that I put my hands up, or it'll throw my arms back against the
Oh, wow.
back of the seat, which can hurt. So I have to watch the angle that my arms go up. But and then it was one of those things, okay, you finally did it. Now you have to do it again to make sure when you come back, you don't chicken out and you're not holding on for dear life again. So that was my experience on my scariest coaster. So you said when you got off of King Cobra, it was a wonderful experience for you.
It was.
Do it again. It was very freeing. Would you say that it had an impact on your life after riding that coaster?
It did, because I mean, it made me want to go ride more coasters. You know, because you think about it, it was 1984. I was, that would maybe like 5 or 6, I guess it was back then. So you're a kid and you're apprehensive about doing a lot of things as a kid. You know, I'm a firm believer that if I didn't do it, I may have not rode coasters. You know what I'm saying? Like, I rode the Beastie, but that really, you know, it's the Beastie. I mean, it's kind of like, it's a little Outback, and it's not that big of it's not really a huge thrill coaster. You know, it's an intermediate family kid style ride. But King Cobra was really like my first major thrill ride. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was my first looping coaster. And I don't think I would have gone on anything else upside down. I wouldn't have gone on Vortex. I can tell you that, if I didn't go on King Cobra. Vortex wouldn't have been my all-time favorite looper. It still is to this day, even though it's not there anymore. But yeah, it had a lasting impact on the rest of my life.
I can totally get that. One of the things that you said that really stood out to me, you know, you said you're apprehensive about a lot of things as a kid. A lot of those things that we're apprehensive about as kids, if we don't overcome that when we're children, I discovered carried into my adult life.
Right.
So facing and overcoming fear, I found, and it wasn't even anything that happened on purpose, that it has really impacted every area of my life. One of the things I've struggled with a lot throughout my life, largely due to, how I was raised and that sort of thing, is being very codependent, being a people pleaser. The rule in our house, was just whatever you do, don't make the adults mad. Even if you need to speak up, just don't, don't make anybody mad. That was the golden rule.
Yeah.
I've discovered through the process of facing fear, it just happens when you're not expecting it. All of a sudden, I'm able to be assertive. I'm able to stand up for myself. I'm able to stand up for my children when I need to, and I'm not afraid to do it. I've become just more confident in general. I didn't used to have any friends because I just was so quiet and to myself. And, those are impacts that overcoming fear have had on my life. And I didn't really actually see it happening until it happened.
Well, I was afraid as a kid because I was teased a lot as a kid. Because of my size. Like, I mean, I'm not a small person. I was always the biggest kid in class. I was teased for being overweight, or I was teased for being tall. And one of the things is that, if I didn't throw myself into art or music, I really would have hated school because of the fact that I got teased a lot. I mean, I had friends, yes, don't get me wrong, but most of my friends were in band or they were in chorus, because I'm not saying band and chorus kids are different, but band and chorus kids, okay, they're kind of different because they're kind of creative individuals. But roller coasters too did help me because going to theme parks allowed me to get away from all the other stuff that was going on. Just like, I think you guys can kind of relate to the whole getting away aspect of when you go to an amusement park. Like, there was a post that came across my Facebook the other day, and it was from like 4.5 years ago, and it said Warner's Disneyland, and it was a post about Kings Island. I mean, because I don't have the money to go to Disney World or Disneyland, so the closest thing I'm ever going to get to right now is going to Kings Island. So that's the way I kind of look at it. So I mean, that's my getaway is going to Kings Island or going to Cedar Point or going to Carowinds or going to Dollywood or any place like that. So can you kind of relate to that?
Totally. My getaway in school, because I had it sounds like a similar school experience to you. I was picked on for pretty much everything under the sun. I went through a phase where I was overweight, so I was made fun of for that. I had really thick glasses because I still can't see. I have glasses on, but I was made fun of for my glasses. I used to have a really big gap in my teeth, so I was made fun of for my teeth. The gap was so big, it made me lisp when I was younger. So I was picked on for that. And if it wasn't one thing, it was another, because that's what bullies tend to do. If they're not going to find one thing to pick on you about, they're going to find something else.
Yeah.
My getaways in school, I was in band and on the tennis team, but I was still very isolated within those groups. I would take my trumpet and just practice for hours. I would go to the tennis court. We had like this big backboard you could practice on.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be there 3 or 4 hours at a stretch, working on tennis skills. That was my getaway at that point in time. But very much like you, in my adult life, that's what I have found is my getaway now, is Kings Island roller coasters, because once you let go of fear, you let go of all the stress in your life too. It's just so freeing. And one of the wonderful things that's really unexpectedly occurred through our trips to Kings Island is it's kind of become like the old show Cheers. You want to go where everybody knows your name. Even when when you show up and you don't even tell anybody you're coming.
Yeah.
You always find friends. And a lot of times when you're not expecting it to happen, you wind up making new friends along the way.
Well, it's funny you should say that, you just showing up and you make friends. I didn't join a roller coaster club until probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And then when I joined a roller coaster club, the very first roller coaster club I ever joined was Coaster Crew. And when I joined Coaster Crew, I met 3 of the nicest people that I still call my friends today. I met them all in Coaster Crew. And then I met some other people. I'm an ACE member now, but I met more of my friends that I have now, addition to the coaster friends I have now. I met them through ACE. So I met the friends that I talk to now more. I met them through coasters than I had previously going through, I guess you would say, life, whether it be high school or college or anything. But I hardly talk to anybody I went to high school with anymore, except for one person as my best friend from high school. He and I still keep in contact today, but everybody else I talk to that I hang out with, they're all from coasters. So.
Absolutely. That's what's happened to my life over the past couple of years. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Okay. So we just talked about your experience on King Cobra. Thinking about all of the roller coasters you've ridden, have you ever had a really crazy moment? And if so, what has your craziest moment been on a coaster?
The craziest moment I ever had to have been when Diamondback first opened up. And you know that little phone area they have outside where they show like, if you don't put your phone away, this is what's going to look like. So I was sitting in the very back row. You know how you get a lot of airtime going on Diamondback. So we're cresting the second hill after you drop down the first hill and you go up over and you're cresting over the second one. So I see this phone just floating in midair. As we're going over the second hill, I just see this phone floating in midair and I caught it midair.
That is the coolest story ever. You have a catch a phone credit on a coaster. I'm jealous.
I mean, it was just coming straight at me. I just caught it in midair. I held on to it and then I gave it to the ride up afterwards. And I was like, here.
That's crazy. That actually reminds me, Tim Walter from F5 Coasters. He told me the same thing happened to him. A phone floated up and he caught it.
Yep.
The craziest story I have was when we had a last train ride on Orion. I'll never forget this. It was back in 2020 when we had to wear the mask. Didn't rain a drop the whole day. And about 5 minutes before we got on that last train, it started pouring a tsunami.
Oh, that's crazy.
And all these people started running out of line. And we're like, well, we're going to get soaked going to the parking lot. So may as well stay here and get wet anyway. By the time we got off that coaster, the water had gotten up under my mask. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see a thing.
Did you feel like you got waterboarded?
Yeah. I had puddles of water standing in my shoes. We laughed all the way to the car. And I'll tell you, when we went to Speedway that night, we got some really interesting looks. That was a fun night. Hi, everybody. See you. All right. So I'm going to ask you, do you count your coaster credits?
I have, but I usually don't. But like, I know how many that I've ridden. Like over, like, I'm saying I know what my coaster count is, but I don't normally keep count. Like before this podcast, like I went and actually like tallied up so I could go on here and tell you how many I actually have. But I don't make it a habit of. I just like to ride.
Mm-hmm.
I don't make it a habit of like I have that credit, I have that credit, I have that credit. But for this podcast sake, I'll tell you what my number is.
Tell us the magic number, please.
What's that?
Tell us the magic number, please.
Magic number is 185.
That's a good number. Out of those 185 coasters, that's a lot. What is your absolute favorite coaster that you've ridden?
My absolute favorite coaster out of those 185 is, I mean, I keep on coming back to Kings Island, but like, I really can't. I'd have to rank them like by classification of like steel and then hybrid and then wooden and then inverted. So I'd have to do it that way. But like, my favorite wooden is the Racer. And it's even more of a favorite now that it got retracked. Because Gravity Group did an amazing job on that.
Yes.
And then my favorite steel coaster is Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point. Because that was my very first hyper coaster that I rode. I rode it in '89 when it opened up at Cedar Point, and we waited. My brother and I and my dad, we all waited like, was it 5 hours to ride that ride? So I remember when that Magnum Q was nice and big, and it had a DJ there, and they had music playing and everything. I mean, that was pretty cool having a DJ booth right there. I mean, Cedar Point, when they go big, they usually go big. But then I would have to go. Favorite invert would be Afterburn, followed by Montu. I mean, it's a close neck and neck. I don't know if you've ridden Montu yet.
I have. I rode it back over spring break.
How did you like it?
It's my favorite in the back row. I love
in the back row.
course, I'm short. So the thing, the do or die for me with those over the shoulder restraints is headbanging.
Okay.
If there's any headbanging at all, it goes down the list. In the back row, I was able to let go. I didn't even have to try to hold on because I didn't have to try to hold on or anything because on a lot of the inverts, I have to hold on and keep my head way back to control the headbanging. Didn't have to do that in the back row of Mon 2 whatsoever. And I loved it. In the front row, it tried to get my head a couple times.
Yeah. Okay.
Very minorly.
See, I like the middle to the back there on Mon 2. That was pretty good. Alpengeist was kind of the same way. I don't know if you've ridden Alpengeist that way. The front was kind of the same.
I have. And Alpengeist and Afterburn both. I had to work really hard to control the headbanging. I love the intensity. I love the underground dive.
Those Gen 1 B&Ms were just amazing. That's like Raptor. Like Raptor is awesome.
But I can definitely see the love that you have for Afterburn. Because it seems to me like a lot of, taller people that don't have their head right there inside that restraint, it seems to make a big difference. The same case with Magnum. I have yet to have a good ride on that. And I am bound and determined somehow to learn how to ride that coaster and like it because I've heard from too many people how
ride the back row.
I've tried every row and it tears my thighs up. But someone told me to ride it.
I have bigger thighs than you, Kim, and I ride it fine.
I don't know if it's a height thing or what. But somebody told me to ride it pretty much standing up. Don't let your bottom hit the seat. So the next time I ride it, that's what I'm going to try, and I'll go in the back.
See, like how I ride it, Kim, is that like when you go over, are you talking when you go over the bunny hills?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you go over the bunny hills, like I usually just kind of like lock my thighs up into lock it up into the restraint. So like you kind of like brace for it a little bit. That's how I do it. So like I don't find it like very like painful at all. I find it fine.
Oh, I'm definitely
gotta love Ron Toomer and his coat hanger.
I'm definitely going to keep that in mind because that is another life goal of mine right now is to learn how to appreciate that coaster. Because right now I just don't feel the love for it. And there's too many people that say good things about it. I need to try again. That's the mindset that I'm in.
Magnum's legendary.
I agree. I've heard it's so many people have so many good things to say about it. I'm still thinking there's something I have to be doing wrong.
But I was gonna say my continuing down that list, my favorite shuttle launch coaster, if you want to call it a shuttle launch, was Superman the Escape out of Magic Mountain. It's got like 7 seconds of airtime just hanging there.
I've not been to Magic Mountain yet.
You got to get out to Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain, Knott's Berry Farm. Those are really great parks.
My goal is to get there next year in 2023. That's on the radar. Okay, so you've told us your favorite coasters in each category. Would you say that you have a least favorite coaster?
Oh, yeah, one that I would never ride again?
Yes.
Storm Chaser.
That's interesting. There are so many mixed reviews on Storm Chaser. Some people have it literally in their top 5. Other people, such as yourself, do not like it. What is it about Storm Chaser that you don't enjoy?
It's, for me, being as tall as I am, it's the restraint. And it killed my thighs, and it just wasn't a very enjoyable experience. And I was just like, hey, once it's cool, I got the credit, I'm done.
I noticed that. I was there.
You were there for that day. Yeah.
I was there for pass holder weekend this past weekend too. And something I noticed, and it didn't stand out to me as much when I first rode Storm Chaser as it does now that I've ridden more of the top tier RMCs, most recently Iron Quasi, which is, as Andrew calls it, the Goldilocks of RMCs. It really is. When I got back on Storm Chaser after many rides on Iron Gwazi, I was like, wow, the transitions on this thing are really jerky.
Yeah, they're rough.
They are, and I didn't notice that before.
Yeah, especially
And
the ending. The
yes,
ending bunny hills
and it's
are completely like. I
it's
mean,
painful.
they're more rough on that than they are in Magnum at Cedar Point. And Magnum at Cedar Point, it's over 30 years old. If that says
And,
anything.
mhm. And I also found it to be a bit bumpy, which those are not things that stood out to me until I've gotten more experience. But I can see where you're coming from with that opinion on that ride. Totally.
And it's just my opinion. It's only an opinion. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm not here to say like my opinion is, right or wrong. It's just an opinion. So
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I've discovered about being in the community and having as many coaster friends as I do. Everybody has a different experience. There are friends of mine that have a deep love for the old Aero coasters. For me, I like Tennessee Tornado. Loch Ness Monster was fun.
oh yeah.
Then it just kind of goes downhill from there. I have other friends that absolutely love Vacomas, some of the older Vacomas. For me, almost all of them are a one and done, but everybody likes different things and to each their own. And as long as we're all, riding coasters and sharing our love of coasters and friendship, that's what it's all about.
So I take it you're not a Vacoma SLC fan.
No, absolutely not. And yes, I have ridden some that are worse than T3. One of my least favorite coasters, we're talking about least favorite. There's a couple. The first one, we talked about stand-up coasters, is Vortex at Carowinds.
Yeah, I can do without that for a while.
That thing, my legs felt like they were going to blow up and it beat my head to death.
That's probably one of that ride is probably one of the hardest for me to ride because it doesn't go up tall enough.
Yeah.
Now, like one of the best stand-up B&M rides that I've ridden, it was Chang, but it's not Green Lantern out at Six Flags.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a cool stand-up. I mean, that was very smooth. I can see why people at Kentucky Kingdom love Chang.
I can't even remember if I rode Chang. So that's why I'm not going to count it. I went to Kentucky Kingdom when I was younger, but I can't remember if I rode Chang. So I'm not going to count it until I actually ride it as it is now. And with the SLCs, I think the worst one I've ridden, and I've ridden some bad ones, up at Michigan's Adventure last year, Thunderhawk.
Thunderhawk, yeah.
I've never experienced something that felt like it was going to amputate my arms.
Well, didn't that used to be at Jago Lake?
I'm not sure. The shoulder pain on that ride was absolutely unbearable. It was so sharp and so painful. I can take the thigh numbing of T3 over the arm amputation of Thunderhawk. So I'll leave it at that. Those are a couple of my least favorites. Now, you and I have discussed before that you have epilepsy, correct?
I do.
How has having epilepsy impacted both your coaster life and your everyday life?
Coaster life, it hasn't really had too much effect. Just that I can't do a whole lot of spinning rides. I have to take medicine every single day for the rest of my life. For my everyday life, I guess you would say, I got to carry a disability card with me, like a federal disability card from the state of Ohio that says that I have a class 1 disability. I have to have a 2-part driver's license that allows me to operate a motor vehicle. I can't just have a regular license. I have to have a 2-part medical license to operate a motor vehicle. Every single year, I have to go see my neurologist for a yearly checkup to make sure that I didn't have any seizures during the year. just to be able to drive. I'm 43 now, and I've had epilepsy ever since I was in the third grade. That's when it first started. It started as staring spells, and then it graduated more to the tics, like the head bob tics, and then it graduated to grand mal seizures. And I can't even count how many grand mal seizures my entire life. It's something that I wish no parent or anybody else would have to go see their child go through, or a sibling. I mean, I can't imagine what my brother had to go through, my parents had to go through, watching me go through that. There would be days where I'd be fine, and then there'd be days at a time where I'd be having seizures left and right. I spent the majority of my 4th, 5th, 6th grade years at Cincinnati Children's Hospital trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and they finally diagnosed me with juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, which is basically, as I understand it, it's like a generalized epilepsy, where you have your synapses in your brain will be fine, and then all of a sudden you'll get irregularities basically in your brain waves, and then just all heck goes loose. So, but knock on wood, I've been 8 years right now seizure free. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's been a blessing. I mean, every day I thank God for, another year and another day not having any issues. But I'm never going to be out of the woods. I always have to take medication. And like, if anybody wants to message me, about similar experiences, like having epilepsy, what can they do about it, or where can they go, or that kind of stuff. I mean, I try to work with the Epilepsy Foundation, like with doing like an art thing every single year, like drawing an art piece and then donating the proceeds to the Epilepsy Foundation every single year, because I try to be a huge advocate for epilepsy awareness, because it's really close to me. I mean, that issue is a really close cause because for one, I have it. So, but the way that it would affect amusement parks for me is I don't do flat rides usually, because it's staying in one spot and then going around and spinning messes with my equilibrium, which could send me into a seizure.
That's totally understandable. And I thank you for educating me on that, because that's not something I would have ever thought ever been aware of before you told me. My son, he used to have seizures, and we didn't know it for a number of years. He had short-term memory loss, always has had issues. Like, he could learn something like math or whatever one day, have a really good grip on it and understand it, and the next day, like, he'd look at it like he'd never seen it before. And it took a really long time to figure out where these memory lapses were coming from. And it caused him for a while to have a really hard time in school, because teachers would think he was just playing dumb, being lazy and that sort of thing. And after a number of years, figured out that he was having absence seizures.
Oh yeah.
And they were so quick, it was hard to even know that it was happening, because he has ADHD and autism. And so, a lot of it would just be kind of passed off as he was, thinking about something else or not focusing or that sort of thing. And it wasn't until he went to the neurologist and had testing done that they discovered that he was having absence seizures. He has thankfully outgrown those, but the lasting impacts on his short-term memory as he's getting older, now that he's got his first job and everything, that's something he has to make sure that they are aware of. He has a, slow processing speed. He needs, repetition to retain what he's taught. And, self-advocacy for him, even though he no longer has the seizures, is going to be critical for him to be successful in his adult life. Okay, so I know that you are a very well-known artist and you've done a ton of very recognizable artwork in the coaster community. What is your favorite coaster design you have created in your artwork, and why is it your favorite design?
It's the Thunder Run poster that I did for Kentucky Kingdom's art show. What was that, last year, 2 years ago? It's my favorite because it allowed me to use different techniques I hadn't used before. All that wood on the track that I did, that was a new technique that I had learned about, where you could take a piece, that was a piece of wood, like a picture that I had taken, and it allowed me to like map it onto a surface in Adobe Illustrator, and basically turn it to different directions and shapes and that kind of stuff, make it look like different pieces of wood, so that like the picture actually looks like, so the drawing actually kind of looks like almost like a photograph because of the wood beams on it. I don't know if you've seen the piece, but I made it so that each different piece of the structure of Thunder Run, like the wood grain, it looks different, but I was able to achieve that by just turning the piece, the pattern a certain direction and scaling it and moving it up and around in different directions to make it look that way. But it was a new technique that I had learned at that time. So like, that's why that is my favorite, because it was a new skill I had learned at the time that I was able to acquire right before that, I guess, art show. And so I was able to, make that look the most realistic of them all. So, and plus it was for their art show, and it was going for a good cause. And I was on the panel with other artists. I was on there with Steph, and I was on there with Aaron, and I was on there with Adam Brown from over in England, and Gabby, she was on that panel too. So to be considered with the likes of all those other artists was such a good honor. So that's one of the other reasons why that's my favorite piece.
Yes, I have actually seen the artwork. I do remember it quite very well from Keys to the Kingdom that year. Now, I know a lot of us know how to find your artwork, but there are others that are probably wondering where they can look at your artwork and purchase it if they would like to. Would you please tell us where your artwork is available for purchase?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, which is my name, it's KristopherWernerDesigns.com. That's KristopherWernerDesigns.com. Or you can go to CoasterPosters.com. It's basically the same website, but it's the Coaster Posters redirects. I have different art on there. Like right now, I have a 3-button set with a postcard from Orion that the proceeds are going to the Kid Again Foundation. So you get the 3 different Orion crew pins that I went ahead and designed. And then you get a 5x7 postcard of my Orion poster that I did from last year. I just shrunk it down and made it a postcard size, so you can send it out if you're going on vacation, or if you want to frame it, you can do that. But it's $30, and you can go ahead and buy that on the website, and then all the proceeds from the sale of that go towards a Kid Again Foundation. So.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that information with our listeners. When it comes to overcoming fear, what advice can you give to those who are listening and may be wanting to overcome fears and challenges in their own life?
The advice that I can give those who are listening about fear is don't let fear get in your way. Don't let fear stop you from doing anything. Always rise up to the challenge. I guess a little backstory about me when I was in college is I had some people tell me that I would never amount to anything in design. And I kind of, for a couple of years, took that. I was scared because when I was in college, I saw some of the other people that were, better than what I was. But I kind of let the fear of that rule me for, a couple of years. But then finally, I got to meet Jeff Joyner, and I got to do the Coaster Kids logo, and I saw all the kids wearing the stuff, wearing the t-shirts, wearing the logos, how they were overcoming their fears and whatnot. And I was like, they can overcome the fears. I can overcome my fears too about, stepping out of the shadows and putting my art out there. So I have to give a big shout out to Jeff Joyner for helping me overcome, my design fears too. So I just, if it wasn't for Jeff, I mean, I don't know where I'd be when it comes to design work, because he really helped me, kind of kickstart this whole, Kris Werner designs thing. So I just want to give Jeff a big shout out too. So, but my advice is that I would just say, don't give up on your dreams and don't let fear get in the way, because like I said, there's the worst thing you can do is don't try. So always try. I mean, if you're afraid to get on a roller coaster, don't let that stop you, because it could be the best thing ever for you. So.
Absolutely. And, you were talking about the great things that Jeff Joyner has done for you and the Coaster Kids Foundation, kind of getting your Kristopher Werner Designs career up and going. It was Coaster Kids that brought us into.
Yeah, it was Coaster Kids that brought us together, and it was, Coaster Kids that kind of kickstarted all this freelance stuff for me off too. So
they certainly have done a tremendous amount of good for a whole world of people. So,
oh yeah, they have.
So thank you, Jeff Joyner, and thank you, Logan and Coaster Kids, for that. Okay, so my last question is, where can you be found on social media for people that might want to view your artwork or just find out more about Kris Werner?
So you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Instagram, and you can find me on Facebook. So on Twitter, it's at K Werner Designs, and on Instagram, it's Kristopher Werner Designs, and on Facebook, it's Kristopher Werner Designs, and that's all with a K. That's all I gotta say. It's all with a K.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being our guest on the Coaster Challenge podcast. I've really enjoyed talking to you and hearing your story. Thank you so much.
I love talking with you too, Kim. It's always a pleasure.
Good talking with you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to see more of us, we upload every Friday. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all at Coaster Challenge. Links are in the description below. Thanks for joining us here today.